Xavier Galvan's first love, Winter Singleton, happens to return to the country on the same day our daughter, Tina Galvan, is diagnosed with a heart condition. I wait helplessly with my 5-year-old Tina at the hospital for her results. Meanwhile, Xavier drives to the airport to pick up Winter and her son, Becker, just so that he can feel like he is a father to pick them up. I sign the surgery consent form alone while sitting by Tina's hospital bed. Meanwhile, Xavier takes Winter shopping at the mall and even picks out a birthday present for his newly appointed godson. On the day of Tina's surgery, just before she's wheeled into the theater, she grabs Xavier's sleeve tightly, refusing to let go. "I'm scared, Daddy. Can you please stay here with Mommy and wait for me?" He agrees. However, a split moment later, Winter calls him. "Xav, Ian's looking for his daddy everywhere at the birthday party. Can you please come over?" Xavier doesn't even hesitate as he pries Tina's fingers one by one from his sleeve and says, "It's just a small surgery, Tina. There's nothing to be afraid of. Winter needs Daddy now, but I'll be back soon afterward, okay?" Then, Xavier turns to leave. Tina doesn't cry. However, the first thing she does after coming back out of the surgery is to refer to him by a different address. "I don't want Uncle Xavier as my daddy anymore, Mommy." When my husband, Xavier Galvan, finally returned, it was already 2 a.m. Our daughter, Tina Galvan, had already come out of the operating theater, and the nurse, Sherry York, was wheeling her into the ICU for further observation. Meanwhile, I had also just gotten off the phone with Dad. Xavier came up to me, a woman's perfume still strong on his clothes, and asked, "So what's Tina's condition like now? What did the doctors say?" In the past, I had always hoped that he would ask more about Tina and show more concern about her. I wanted him to show himself as a good father to her and not let her suffer the same fate as I did of being treated as a mere dispensable substitute for his first love instead. But today, I didn't even look back at him as I replied calmly, "It's nothing much. She's okay." Xavier frowned. "What is this behavior, Heather Shaw? Tina is my daughter too. Really?" I smiled slightly, still not turning around to face him. Just a week ago, Tina had been diagnosed with a congenital heart disease. Meanwhile, Xavier's first love, Winter Singleton, had also just returned to the country after years of being abroad. I held Tina in my arms, waiting anxiously at the hospital for her results, while Xavier refused to pick up a single one of my calls as he drove all the way to the airport to pick Winter and her son, Becker, up. Tina was hospitalized that night. And the first story that Winter posted on her Instagram was a video of Xavier interacting with Ian, captioned, "We still ended up together after all the things we've gone through. I think that it's the start of something romantic." In the video, Xavier was telling Ian to refer to him as Daddy. I had been married to him for 7 years, and we had a 5-year-old daughter together. After she was diagnosed with a heart condition and hospitalized, he never even bothered calling once. Meanwhile, Winter was his first love, and the moment she set foot into the country after her divorce, Xavier had her son call him Daddy. I replayed the video on my phone a total of 33 times. That was the first time when I realized that both Tina and I never meant much to him after all. For the days following that, I busied myself communicating with her doctor and surgeon about the upcoming heart surgery, ferrying myself back and forth between our home and the hospital. As for Xavier, he never even came home once during those few days. He had been worried that Winter couldn't get used to living by herself back here, so he personally escorted her around to scout out suitable places for her to rent. He also cooked for her and Ian 3 times a day, worried that she couldn't get used to the food here. I had been married to him for so many years, and I never knew he could cook. Finally, it was the day of Tina's surgery. She cried all night long because she was scared. She said that she wanted her dad and asked me why Xavier wasn't here to keep her company at the hospital. I had no other option but to call him again. This time he finally picked up, but his voice was impatient and annoyed. "What is it now? Didn't I tell you not to call me just because you felt like it, Heather Shaw? Tina's heart surgery is tomorrow." Xavier hesitated. I listened to the sound of Winter and Ian laughing and giggling in the background and continued, saying, "Tina's really scared and wants you here. Xavier, for the sake of our 7 years of marriage, come over to the hospital now." "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" he shot back in anger. I chuckled. My chuckle was so light that it vanished like the wind the moment it appeared. "Tina was diagnosed with a heart condition a week ago. I called you 78 times. You never picked up." Xavier made his way to the hospital the next day. Tina had been hospitalized for 7 days, and this was the first time he'd arrived at the hospital to see her. "Daddy, you're here," Tina exclaimed, smiling at him purely and innocently. However, he acted like he'd just been pricked by a needle and refused to meet her eye.
"Yeah."
Then he pulled me out into the hospital hallway. What did the doctor say? Ventricular septal defect. It's a bit off-center and requires a minor open-heart surgery to repair it. Is it dangerous? The risk is small if she doesn't get emotional or worked up. Xavier heaved a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. Then he lifted his wrist and checked his watch. It's Ian's birthday today. I promised Winter that I would be there for the party. When is the surgery? I only have 3 more hours to spare. Xavier used the word spare on us to describe the time he would be spending accompanying his own daughter for a heart surgery. It felt as though this precious time was something that his wife and daughter had to fight for. I gave him a deep look before turning and walking back into Tina's ward. The surgery was scheduled for 2 p.m. Sherry then wheeled Tina out, who'd lost a lot of weight since being hospitalized, to prep her beforehand. Tina's eyes were red. She gripped both me and Xavier tightly as she was wheeled out, refusing to let go. Mommy, does the surgery hurt? I'm really scared. Her surgeon, Dr. Paul Quinton, suggested the patient is only 5 years old, and it's important that her emotional stability is maintained throughout the surgery for it to succeed. As parents, I hope that you will give your child as much emotional support as possible during the surgery. Especially you, Dr. Quinton added, eyeing Xavier. The child has been crying all night asking for her dad. I don't know what you've been busy with lately, Mr. Galvan, but your daughter needs you at this crucial time. Tina then lifted her head, her dark eyes blinking with tears as she looked at Xavier expectantly. Daddy, can you please stay here with Mommy and wait for me? Xavier looked at her, a flicker of emotion in his eyes. All right. I'll stay with you. Tina smiled. She was just about to say something when his phone suddenly rang, and Winter's tearful voice came through. Xav, where are you? Ian's looking for his daddy everywhere, and he can't find you. Can you please hurry up and come over as soon as possible? Xavier was stunned for only a split second before he agreed, without much thought. I'll be right there. Tina grabbed his sleeve at once. Daddy, where are you going? Xavier didn't even look at her as he pried off each of her fingers one by one, his tone urgent and impatient. Winter has an emergency. I have to go there now. Stay here and be good, okay, Tina? There's nothing scary about the surgery. Mommy will be here with you. Then, he left without another backward glance. Xavier Galvan, I yelled out after him. If you leave now, then you're not Tina's dad anymore. Xavier paused. Seconds later, he slowly turned around and looked at me. Stop saying nonsense. Then, he left resolutely. Tina stared at his disappearing back in vast disbelief, her soft sobs gradually turning into loud wails. Everything seemed to have just happened in a matter of seconds. However, it felt incredibly long, like the past 7 years. The surgery lasted 5 whole hours. Xavier never called at all, not even once. However, Winter posted 3 new updates on her Instagram stories. If they love you, they'll always be there for you, whether rain or shine. Love needs no urging, just a single phone call. So thankful to a certain someone today for his wonderful surprise. Ian said he loved his new daddy now. Every day is filled with happiness when you're with the right person. I tapped through Winter's stories, feeling a pang in my heart. I knew that some things had been thoroughly shattered today. What the hell do you mean by this, Heather? I just didn't stay for Tina's surgery. It's not like it's major surgery anyway. Also, you were there with her the whole time, weren't you? Xavier demanded with a frown on his face, his eyes filled with displeasure. He made it seem as though I was the one in the wrong now. I didn't want to argue with him. Are you done talking? I asked him calmly. If you have, then you can leave now. Winter is still waiting for you. Xavier was caught off guard and at a loss for words. Heather, the patient has woken up. Her family can come in to visit her now, Sherry said, opening the door. I'm coming, I said, hurrying over to the ward and putting on the protective suit as instructed without giving Xavier a second glance. He tightened his fist, feeling a little uncomfortable. However, he wasn't in the mood to argue with me either. He just reached out his hand expectantly to Sherry. Where's my suit? Sherry looked up at him, her eyes filled with surprise. Then, she said coldly, I'm sorry, sir, but the patient only said that she wanted to see her mother. She didn't mention anyone else. Then, she turned to me and urged me to hurry. Are you done? Tina's waiting for you. The door then closed in Xavier's face. In the ward, Tina smiled at me with much difficulty. Mommy. I quickly went up to her and held her hand, my eyes turning red. Yes, Tina. Mommy's here. She smiled again and lifted her tiny hands to wipe my tears away. Don't cry anymore, Mommy. It doesn't hurt anymore. Mr. Doctor said that I'll get better very soon. You don't have to worry anymore. She was trying to comfort me in her own clumsy way, but it only made the tears in my eyes fall even faster. Tina, Daddy's here now. Do you want Daddy to come in and see you? Tina's smile vanished as she turned to look at the observation window, where Xavier was standing. When he saw her looking at him, he was stunned at first. Then, he quickly waved at her like he was happy to see her. However, Tuna quickly averted her gaze and looked at me, saying in a serious tone, "I don't want Uncle Xavier as my daddy anymore, Mommy." I kept Tina company in the ICU for the entire night. Xavier also stayed at the window the entire time. Early the next morning, I left to pick something up at home. Xavier came up to me at once. About yesterday. He then trailed off as though he didn't know how to continue. He said, "Help me explain to Tina that I didn't mean to leave her yesterday." I didn't stop walking. He then observed my expression and added, "I've already asked the doctor about it. Tina needs to continue staying at the hospital for another week, and during that time, the house will be empty. So, I was thinking if we could let Winter and Ian stay at our house for a few days. You know that they only just came back from overseas, and they still haven't managed to find a rental yet." Okay. I agreed so quickly that the rest of Xavier's explanation choked in his throat. For some reason, he was dissatisfied with my response. "You're just going to agree like that? You're not going to get mad." "Why would I get mad? Winter is very important to you. Tina and I both know that. Also, you're the one who owns the house, so you can let anyone live in it as you wish." Xavier went quiet. Then he said coldly, "You've changed, Heather." I froze. Then, I took even larger steps forward than before. "People change, Xavier. It was just like when I married him years ago. He still hadn't gotten over Winter yet, but he still told me clearly, since I chose to marry you, that means I'm going to be responsible for you no matter what. I will treat you and any of our future children well and not let you get hurt next time. This is my promise to you, and it will never change." Later on, Tina was born. And although Xavier never said anything about it, I knew that he was secretly very happy and pleased. There were a handful of times when I got up in the middle of the night to pump and saw him sitting next to Tina's cot, staring at her unblinkingly with nothing but pure love and adoration in his eyes. He probably wasn't even aware of how tenderly he was looking at her. I really thought then that we would continue being a happy family. After getting what I needed from the house, I took a cab back to the hospital. Dad called me just then. I've already gotten in touch with the doctor for Tina. He's one of the most famous pediatric cardiologists internationally, and he speaks our language too, but he currently resides in Switzerland. Your mom and I are already on our way there." Dad asked, "When will you and Tina be ready to leave?" "I'll arrange for someone to pick you up." I looked at the newly printed divorce agreement in my hand and answered in a soft tone, "Tomorrow." Dr. Quinton said that Tina's condition is quite stable and well, and I don't really want her to continue staying here anymore. Dad sighed. "All right, we'll do as you say. I should never have made you marry Xavier back then. We will cut off all ties with the Galvans moving on." That afternoon, Tina was transferred from the ICU to a regular ward. I told her about our plans for leaving. At first, I thought that she would be reluctant to leave. I was also prepared to convince her to leave if she made a big fuss about it. However, after telling her about it, Tina was just quiet for a short while before saying, "I want to call him." She was referring to Xavier. I looked at her tear-filled eyes and dialed his number without hesitation. This time, he picked up fairly quickly. "Heather, why is Tina's bedroom locked?" "The guest room is in too much of a sorry sight, so I'm planning to let Ian live in her room for now. Tell me where the keys are at." Xavier's urgent voice was immediately heard from the other side of the line, not knowing that this would be his final phone call with Tina and me before we left. I didn't tell him about it either. I just saw Tina's trembling hands and held them, unable to hold back. "Daddy." She couldn't help calling out to him quietly, her emotions raw as her tears dripped steadily onto the blankets. "Can you come see me at the hospital tonight, just for once?" Xavier was taken aback when he heard her voice. His tone softened at once. "What are you doing with Mommy's phone, Tina? Where's Mommy? Is she next to you? Be a good girl and give the phone back to Mommy, all right?" I took the phone from Tina. "Yes," Xavier said. "Where did you put the key to Tina's bedroom?" I hesitated slightly. "On the study table. You don't mind if I lend Winter your new pajamas in the master bedroom, right?" "Whatever. Also, Ian accidentally dropped the music box on the living room shelf. I'll buy another one to replace it tomorrow. Don't tell Tina about it." I fell silent. Tina had already heard every single word he said. That music box was Xavier's birthday gift to Tina when she was 3 years old. She had always treasured it very much and even went to sleep with it at night. She was scared that she would break it if she brought it to the hospital with her this time, so she left it safely on the living room shelf. However, the first day Xavier brought someone else home, they'd already broken it. "Are you still there, Heather?" Xavier asked, frowning. Also, what did Tina say just now? I didn't hear her properly. Did she say she wanted me to come over tonight?
No.
Tina suddenly grabbed my hand, shaking her head frantically with her eyes red. My fingers tensed, and my breathing also quickened for a second. Ultimately, I smiled bitterly and said, "No, you heard her wrongly." After hanging up, Tina couldn't hold back anymore and fell into my arms. I held her tightly, feeling my heart hurting for her. I knew now that she was completely over Xavier. So I didn't drag on anymore and changed our plans to leave at the last minute. I got Tina discharged by 5 p.m. that night and called Dad to pick us up. Approximately 2 hours later, a helicopter landed on the roof of the hospital. Before getting into the helicopter, I handed Sherry the divorce agreement and said, "Please help me give this to him." Sherry nodded and agreed, and I finally relaxed as I picked Tina up in my arms and headed straight for the helicopter without another backward glance. Meanwhile, Xavier also entered the hospital parking lot at that very same moment. He'd been feeling rather restless and uneasy ever since hanging up. The hospital corridor was unusually quiet at 7:30 p.m. The sharp, rhythmic clicking of Xavier's leather shoes echoed against the polished tiles as he hurried toward the pediatric ward. For the past 2 hours, an inexplicable weight had been pressing down on his
Chest.
Ever since he hung up the phone with Heather, the image of Tina's pale face and her small, trembling voice calling out "Daddy" had replayed in his mind. Like a broken record, he told himself he was just being paranoid. It was just a ventricular septal defect, a common, minor surgery. The doctor had said so himself. He had only left for a few hours to help Winter with Ian's birthday. As a man, he had responsibilities. Winter was a single mother struggling to adjust to a new country, while Heather had her parents and the hospital staff. Heather was always strong. She could handle it. "Excuse me, Mr. Galvan?" Xavier stopped. Sherry York, the nurse who had been caring for Tina, stood outside the door of Ward 302. Her expression was devoid of the usual professional warmth she offered patients. "Where is Heather? And Tina? Why are the lights off?" Xavier asked, his brow furrowing as he reached for the door handle. Sherry didn't move to open it. Instead, she looked at him with a mixture of pity and profound disgust. "The patient has been discharged, Mr. Galvan." "Discharged?" Xavier's voice rose, a sharp edge of disbelief cutting through his
Tone.
"What are you talking about? She just had open-heart surgery today."
How?
"Could she be discharged? Is Heather out of her mind?" "Mrs. Galvan is perfectly sane," Sherry replied coldly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope, holding it out to him. "Before she left, she asked me to hand this to you. She said you wouldn't need to contact her again." Xavier stared at the envelope. His hand shook slightly as he took it.
He tore
open the seal, and several sheets of crisp, white paper slid out. At the top of the first page, printed in bold, stark letters, were the words, "Divorce agreement." Xavier's breath hitched. He tried to laugh, but the sound caught in his throat, dry and hollow. This is ridiculous. Is this her new way of throwing a tantrum? Because I missed the surgery? I told her I had an emergency. Winter's son. "Mr. Galvan," Sherry interrupted, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper.
Do you
"Have any idea what your daughter went through today? I know she had surgery, and I came back." "You came back 5 hours after she was rolled out of the theater," Sherry said, her eyes flashing with anger. "While you were playing father to another woman's child, your daughter's heart rate spiked twice on the operating table because she was crying for you before the anesthesia took effect. When she woke up, the first thing she did was look at the door, hoping her daddy would be there.
and
Do you know what she saw on your wife's phone instead? A live broadcast of you buying a giant toy car for another boy, promising to be his new father." Xavier felt the blood drain from his face.
I
"I was going to buy Tina something better tomorrow." "There is no tomorrow for you here," Sherry said, stepping aside and opening the door to the ward. The room was completely empty. The sheets on the bed were stripped. The small teddy bear Heather had bought to keep Tina company was gone. On the bedside table, only a single, half-empty bottle of mineral water remained. "They left 2 hours ago," Sherry said quietly. "A private medical transport team picked them up from the roof. Your wife didn't leave a single trace behind. Sign the papers, Mr. Galvan. It's the only decent thing you have left to do." The drive back to the villa was a blur. Xavier drove at breakneck speed, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "She's just bluffing," he told himself, the panic clawing at his throat. Heather has nowhere to go. Her parents live in a modest suburban house, and they don't have the resources to hide a recovering child from me. She'll be at the villa. She's probably waiting there, wanting me to beg for forgiveness. When he pulled into the driveway, the lights in the living room were blazing.
A
Surge of relief washed over him. He pushed the door open, ready to apologize, ready to promise that he would make it up to them. Heather. Tina.
Zav.
You're finally back. Winter Singleton stepped out of the kitchen, wearing a silk apron over her designer dress. She held a spatula, smiling warmly at him. Ian and I were waiting for you. The kitchen in this place is so spacious. I made your favorite, mushroom soup. Ian is upstairs playing in Tina's room. He absolutely loves the balcony. Xavier stood frozen in the entryway. The relief he had felt a second ago instantly dissolved, replaced by a cold, suffocating dread. Why are you here? His voice was barely a whisper. Winter's smile faltered slightly. She walked over, attempting to take his coat. What do you mean, silly? You told me this morning that since Tina was staying in the hospital for a week, Ian and I could move in. You even gave me the keys. Remember? Xavier didn't answer. He bypassed her, his boots thudding heavily as he ran up the stairs. He threw open the door to the master bedroom. The room was pristine, too pristine. The vanity table, which used to be cluttered with Heather's modest skincare bottles, was completely bare. The closet, which had been split evenly between his dark suits and her soft, pastel-colored dresses, was half empty. Only his clothes remained, hanging like silent ghosts in the vast space. Heather, he muttered, pulling open the drawers. Empty. Not a single sock. Not a jewelry box, not even a hair tie. He turned and strode down the hallway to Tina's room. The door was unlocked. Inside, 6-year-old Ian was jumping on Tina's pink bed, throwing her stuffed animals onto the floor. On the desk, the beautiful, hand-carved wooden music box, the one Xavier had searched 3 countries to find. For Tina's 3rd birthday, lay in pieces on the floor. The delicate brass gears were crushed under Ian's sneakers.
Ian.
Stop, Xavier roared. The boy startled, slipping off the bed and immediately bursting into tears.
Daddy.
You screamed at me. Winter came running up the stairs, immediately pulling Ian into her arms. Xavier, what is wrong with you? He's just a child. You frightened him. Who told him he could be in here? Xavier's chest heaved, his eyes wild as he pointed at the shattered music box. I told you to keep him out of Tina's room. Look what he did. He broke her favorite toy. Winter's expression hardened, her gentle demeanor slipping for a fraction of a
second.
It's just a toy, Xavier. I'll buy her another one. Why are you making such a big deal out of a plastic box? Besides, Heather and Tina aren't even here. Why can't Ian use the room? You said you loved him like your own son. Like my own son. The words echoed in Xavier's mind, but for the first time, they didn't bring him the warmth they used to. Instead, they felt like a heavy, suffocating shackle. He looked at Ian's tear-streaked face, then at the broken music box, and finally, at Winter's beautifully made-up face. Suddenly, the reality of what he had done hit him with the force of a tidal wave. He had abandoned his own flesh and blood, a child who had just had her chest cracked open, for a woman who couldn't even show a shred of empathy for a sick 5-year-old. Get out, Xavier said, his voice deadly quiet. Winter blinked, stunned.
What?
I said, get out of my house. Both of you. Xavier, are you crazy? Winter's voice pitched higher as she stood in the living room, her suitcases packed but her feet planted firmly on the rug.
Where?
Do you expect us to go at this hour? The hotels are fully booked and Ian is tired. I don't care, Xavier said coldly, his face pale and eyes bloodshot.
He was
clutching his phone, dialing Heather's number for the 47th time. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. He tried her WeChat. A red exclamation mark stared back at him. You are not a contact of this user. He tried her Instagram, her email, her mother's phone, her father's phone. Every single avenue of communication was dead. It was as if Heather Shaw had never existed in his world. Before Winter could protest further, Xavier's phone rang. He answered it, instantly, not even looking at the caller ID. Heather. I'm sorry, Xavier. What the hell did you do? It wasn't Heather. It was his father, David Galvan, the chairman of Galvan
Group.
The older man's voice was laced with an unprecedented level of panic and
rage.
Dad? What's wrong? What's wrong? Our shares are plummeting. The Shaw Group just announced they are pulling all their investments from our logistics project. Not only that, but 3 of our major suppliers just canceled their contracts with us, citing a conflict of interest with Shaw Enterprises. We are losing $80 million by the minute. Xavier's mind went blank. The Shaw Group? Dad, we don't have any major dealings with the Shaw Group. They're a multi-billion-dollar multinational conglomerate. Why would they care about our mid-sized logistics firm? Because your wife is Heather Shaw. David roared, his voice cracking.
You idiot.
Did you seriously not know who your own wife's father was? Xavier's hand holding the phone began to tremble. What are you talking about? Heather's father is a retired high school teacher. He retired from teaching 20 years ago to build the Shaw conglomerate from the ground up. David screamed. Marcus Shaw is her father. He kept her identity hidden because she wanted a simple, ordinary life. She wanted to marry for love, not status. When you proposed to her, Marcus called me personally and promised to quietly back our family business as long as you treated his daughter well. And now, I just got a call from their legal team. They are dissolving every single joint venture. They're going to ruin us. Xavier, what did you do to her? The phone slipped from Xavier's fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. He looked around the empty, silent living room. The memories of the last 7 years rushed back, blindingly bright and agonizingly painful. Heather had never asked him for designer bags. She had never asked him for luxury cars. When he was struggling to secure his first major business loan, a mysterious investor had suddenly appeared and offered him the capital at a near-zero interest rate. He had assumed it was his own brilliant business plan that had won them over. Now he knew. It was Heather. It was always Heather, quietly standing behind him, protecting his fragile ego while he chased after the ghost of a woman who had abandoned him when he was poor. Xav, what's going on? Winter asked, her voice trembling slightly as she saw the look of utter devastation on his face. Who is Marcus Shaw? Xavier didn't look at her. He walked to the front door, opened it and pointed. Outside. Get out, he said, his voice dead and hollow. Before I make you. The air in the Swiss Alps was crisp and clean, smelling of pine needles and fresh snow. In the private garden of the Geneva Pediatric Medical Center, 5-year-old Tina was sitting on a wooden bench, wrapped in a thick, fluffy white coat. Her cheeks, which had been pale and sunken for months, now carried a healthy, rosy
tint.
Mommy.
Look.
A squirrel. Tina pointed a gloved finger at a small brown creature darting up a nearby larch tree. Heather smiled, wrapping her hands around a warm mug of cocoa. She sat down next to her daughter, tucking a stray strand of hair behind Tina's ear. It's very fast, isn't it?
Yes.
Just like me. Dr. Julian said my heart is very strong now. I can run fast. Soon. Tina giggled, her dark eyes sparkling with a life that had almost been snuffed out weeks ago. It had been a month since they arrived in Switzerland, under the care of Dr. Julian, the world's leading pediatric cardiologist. Tina's postoperative recovery had been nothing short of miraculous. Without the stress of a chaotic household and the constant disappointment of a father who never showed up, the little girl had bloomed. A tall, elegant man with silvering hair walked down the stone path toward them, accompanied by a younger man in a tailored charcoal suit. Tina, sweetheart, look who's here, Heather said. Grandpa. Tina scrambled off the bench and ran into Marcus Shaw's open arms. He caught her easily, lifting her up and kissing her cheek. How is my little princess doing today? Marcus asked, his stern face softening into an expression of pure adoration. I'm super good, Grandpa. No more hurts. Tina proudly patted her chest. Marcus smiled, but when he looked over at Heather, his expression turned serious. He signaled to the younger man, who handed a leather folio to Heather. The divorce is finalized, Heather, Marcus said gently. Xavier signed the papers 3 days ago. He didn't fight the custody arrangement. Actually, he didn't fight anything at all. He gave up his rights to the villa, the joint accounts, and signed a full waiver of visitation rights as we demanded. Heather took the papers. She looked at Xavier's signature at the bottom of the page. It was shaky, uneven, completely unlike his usual bold, confident handwriting. A month ago, this document would have made her cry. Now, she felt absolutely nothing. The pain had been burned out of her on the day she stood by Tina's hospital bed alone, watching him walk away to be another child's daddy. What about the Galvan Group? Heather asked quietly. They are on the verge of bankruptcy. the young lawyer replied. Without our backing, their creditors panicked. David Galvan has stepped down as chairman. Xavier is trying to liquidate his personal assets to save the company, but it's a sinking ship. As for Winter Singleton, the lawyer paused, glancing at Tina before continuing in a lower tone.
Her
Ex-husband in Germany found out she returned to the country.
It turns out she
Didn't divorce him because of irreconcilable differences, as she claimed.
she
Fled because she had embezzled money from his family business and kidnapped their son.
he tracked her down last week.
The custody of the boy has been awarded to the father, and she is currently facing criminal charges for child abduction and financial fraud. Xavier spent his remaining liquid cash trying to bail her out initially, but once the truth of her fraud came to light, he washed his hands of her. Heather stared at the pine trees in the distance. The poetic justice of it all felt distant, almost irrelevant. Does he know we are here? She asked. He knows you are in Switzerland, Marcus said, his eyes narrowing slightly.
He
Has been trying to buy plane tickets to Geneva, but I've made sure his visa applications face unexpected administrative delays. However, he is persistent. He's currently at the consulate every day, begging for an entry permit. Heather set the papers down and pulled Tina close to her side. Let him come, Dad. Marcus frowned. Heather, you don't have to see him. I can make sure he never sets foot in this country. No, Heather said, her voice steady and calm. I want him to see us. I want him to see exactly what he threw away, and I want him to understand that he can never ever have it back. 2 weeks later, the administrative barriers mysteriously cleared, and Xavier Galvan finally landed at Geneva International Airport. He looked like a shadow of his former self. The sharp, immaculate businessman who once spent hours selecting the right tie was gone. He wore a rumpled coat. His face was covered in a rough stubble, and his eyes were sunken and bloodshot from weeks of insomnia. He had spent his last remaining savings on a first-class ticket, desperate to reach Heather before she vanished from his life forever. Following the address his private investigator had managed to secure before being shut down by the Shaw family security, Xavier arrived at a beautiful lakeside estate on the outskirts of Geneva. The iron gates were open. He walked down the long, gravel driveway, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Through the large French windows of the estate, he could see a brightly lit dining room. Heather was there. She wore a simple cream-colored sweater, her hair tied up in a loose bun. She looked younger, more radiant than she had in years. The weary, anxious lines that had etched themselves onto her face during their marriage had completely disappeared. She was laughing, talking to a handsome young man who was helping her set the table. Xavier's heart seized with a bitter, agonizing jealousy.
Who was that man?
Was she already replacing him? Then he saw Tina. She was running around the table, chasing a golden retriever puppy. Her laughter was loud, clear, and bubbling with pure joy. She looked so healthy. There was no oxygen tube, no pale skin, no weakness. Xavier's eyes filled with tears. He took a step forward, his hand reaching out to touch the glass of the window. Tina, he whispered. You shouldn't be here. Xavier spun around. Heather was standing by the open patio doors, wearing a thick shawl over her shoulders. She had seen him. Heather. Xavier took 3 quick steps toward her, but stopped when she instinctively took a step back, her eyes cool and completely devoid of warmth. Heather, please.
Just let me speak to you.
Just 5 minutes. There is nothing to say, Xavier, she said, her voice as quiet and steady as the mountain air. The divorce is final. The custody is settled. I was wrong. Xavier fell to his knees on the cold gravel, the tears finally spilling over his cheeks. He didn't care about his pride anymore. He didn't care
About his dignity.
I was a fool, Heather. Winter lied to me about everything. She manipulated me. She used Ian to get close to me because she wanted my money to pay off her debts. I was so blind. Do you think I care about Winter's lies, Xavier? Heather asked, looking down at him with a calm, analytical gaze. Xavier choked on a sob. I know I neglected you. I know I missed the
Surgery.
but I swear I love Tina. I love you. Please give me one more chance. Let me be a father to her again. I'll do anything. I'll work for your father's company. I'll clean floors. I'll do whatever it takes to earn my family back. Your family? Heather let out a soft, ironic chuckle. Xavier, you still don't get it, do you? You didn't lose us because of Winter's manipulation. You lost us because of your own choice. She took a step closer, her voice dropping, though every word cut like a
Scalpel.
when Tina was clutching your sleeve, begging you to stay because she was scared of having her chest cut open, Winter didn't force you to pry her fingers off. You did that yourself. One by one. You chose a birthday party over your daughter's life. You chose a manipulative woman's attention over the wife who spent 7 years building a life with you. I was stupid. I thought it was a minor surgery. There is no such thing as a minor open-heart surgery for a 5-year-old child, Heather said, her eyes flashing with a sudden, icy fire. And even if it was, a real father would have been there.
You wanted to feel like a hero to
Winter and Ian, because with them, you could play the role of the grand savior. With us, you had to face the reality of being a husband and a father, and you were too lazy, too selfish, to do the work. Heather. Go home, Xavier, she said, turning her back on him. There is nothing left for you here. Mommy? Who is that man? A small, sweet voice broke the silence of the patio. Xavier looked up through his tears. Tina was standing at the glass door holding her puppy in her arms. She was staring at him, her dark eyes wide with curiosity, but there was no recognition in them. No love, no fear, just the blank, polite curiosity one would show to a stranger standing on the
lawn.
Xavier's breath caught in his throat. He scrambled to his feet, taking a step toward her. Tina? Tina, it's Daddy. Look at me. Daddy's here. Tina blinked, then looked up at Heather, her brow furrowing. Mommy, why is Uncle Xavier crying? Is he lost? Uncle Xavier. The words felt like a physical blow to Xavier's chest. He felt as if his heart had been violently ripped open, leaving a gaping, bleeding void. She didn't call him Daddy. She didn't even call him by his name. She called him Uncle Xavier, the title she had chosen on the day she woke up from surgery, to find him missing. Tina? Xavier took another step, but the young man he had seen earlier inside the house stepped out, placing a firm, protective hand on Xavier's shoulder. Mr. Galvan, I think it's time you leave, the young man said, his tone polite, but carrying an unmistakable threat. He was Heather's cousin, a security specialist for the Shaw Group. If you take another step toward the child, I will have the local police arrest you for trespassing and harassment. Your visa is already under review. Don't make this harder on yourself. Xavier ignored him, his eyes locked onto his daughter. Tina, please. Don't you remember the music box? Daddy bought it for you. We used to play in the park. I used to carry you on my shoulders. Tina stared at him for a long moment. Then, she looked down at her puppy and back at Heather. Mommy, I want to go inside now. It's cold out here, and Uncle Xavier is weird. She turned around and walked back into the warm, brightly lit house, her laughter echoing once more as she called out to her grandfather. She didn't look back. Not once. Xavier fell back onto his knees, his face buried in his hands as he sobbed uncontrollably. The cold gravel bit into his skin, but he couldn't feel it. The only thing he could feel was the agonizing, suffocating realization of his own ruin. He had traded a lifetime of pure, unconditional love for a fleeting illusion of vanity. And now, the illusion was gone, leaving him entirely, utterly alone in the cold. 3 years later, the summer in Geneva was warm and beautiful. The gardens of the Shaw estate were in full bloom, filled with white roses and lavender. 8-year-old Tina was running across the lawn, her long hair flying behind her, as she kicked a soccer ball toward a makeshift goal. Goal. She cheered, throwing her arms in the air as the ball sailed past her grandfather, who was playing goalie with remarkably slow reflexes. You're too fast for me, Tina? Marcus laughed, panting slightly as he sat down on a lawn chair, accepting a glass of lemonade from Heather. Heather, now 32, looked peaceful. She had spent the last 3 years studying landscape design, and she now managed a successful boutique firm in Geneva. She had built a new life, a new circle of friends, and a deep, unshakable sense of peace. Occasionally, she would get news from home. The Galvan Group had officially declared bankruptcy 2 years ago. David Galvan had retired to a small apartment in the suburbs, his health failing. Xavier had spent the last few years working as a mid-level manager at a logistics firm, the very same kind of job he had looked down upon when he was the wealthy heir to a company. He lived alone in a rented room, his hair turning gray prematurely, his days spent in silent, monotonous regret. He had tried to send letters to Tina on her birthdays, but they were always intercepted by the Shaw family's legal team and returned unopened. Eventually, the letters stopped. He had finally understood that some boundaries, once crossed, could never be rebuilt. Some damages were truly, beautifully
Permanent.
Mommy. Tina ran over, her face sweaty and bright with a healthy glow.
She.
Grabbed Heather's lemonade and took a large gulp. Can we go to the lake?
Tomorrow?
Dr. Julian said, I can swim now. Of course we can, sweetheart, Heather said, wiping the sweat from her daughter's forehead with a tissue. Tina smiled, her eyes crinkling in the exact same way Heather's did. She looked at her mother with absolute trust, absolute love. Heather looked up at the clear blue sky, the warm sun bathing her face. For the first time in 10 years, she felt entirely light. The shadows of her past had finally faded into nothingness, leaving behind only the bright, beautiful path of the future she had built with her own 2 hands.